Hey there, BookTube. Noah. Thank you for joining me again. As you can see, I still have my Dune set up here as the backdrop, and I've been just thinking about it, so I figured why not, continue with this. I want to give everyone reason to actually read the whole series. It's an amazing series. So I'm going to pick up kind of where I left off. I left off touching on Doom Messiah a bit. And with this one here, I hope to go through Children of Dune and touch on God Emperor of Dune. My if I had to pick a favorite, God Emperor of Dune is my favorite book in the Frank Herbert series. It's amazing. So, welcome. And when I was talking about Dune and Dune Messiah last, we touched on a little bit like the Bene Gesserits being this kind of order of matriarchal society. They have the breeding program. They're the ones that have bred Paul Atreides, a Kwisatz Haderach. They know what they're trying to get, kind of, you know. But there's more people, different groups, of course, more factions than just the Bene Gesserits that I can touch on without giving, any spoilers. In Frank Herbert's universe, there had been a time, a long time ago, where humans were enslaved by AI, enslaved by an artificial intelligence that rose from technology. And at the beginning of the Dune universe, and why in the Dune universe there's not all this, computers doing all kinds of stuff, is because there's laws and rules about how technology is to be used in their universe so that AI never rears its head again. So there is a group of people called Mentats. Now they're trained from birth. If a child shows exceptional disposition towards a calculating mind, a thinking, maybe thinking isn't the way to look at it, but just a predisposition towards a very quick calculating mind, mathematical kind of mind, they'll be trained as a mentat. Now every elite family, every kind of family that is a real power in on any planet, they have a mentat. Now, and a mentat is a human being that is essentially a computer. Can think and take many different things into account, different parts of a problem, and then work out a solution in a way that it might be too complex for a normal human being to do. So there's human beings on the planet, on all planets, that are far beyond the calculating ability of what we understand in present day Earth life. That's just a type of person. There's a group of human beings. They're all humans. There's a group of beings, people that live on a planet called Ixion, or their race is Ixion. I seem to think of Tilaxu. It's been a long time since I read the series, and I'm not trying to thumb through it and read it to do these videos because I don't want to give any spoilers. So I'm just going at it like this. I think it's best because I don't want to give spoilers. So my aim is to inspire you guys to read it. So there's a group called the Ixians that actually push the boundaries of what technology you're able lawfully to use in their world, and they have a couple of technological advances that need to be kind of brought out as well. They can make what's called a Gola, which is actually a clone of a being. Now they can do that. They call it an axolotl tank, where they make a clone in, and we'll get to what that is a little bit later. But at first their technology is very secretive. They don't let it out how they can do stuff, but you can pay them, of course, and then they'll do it for elite families. So they can essentially make a clone. Now that clone can be programmed in certain kind of ways, um, or that clone, and at some point that clone, through a certain process, can be woke up to its ancestral memory and essentially be that being. Um, Say they make a clone of somebody, that clone will be a regular baby and child that's just learning what it learns in its lifetime experience, but then through a process that the Bene Gesserits know about, that the Essenes know about, that any of these elites know about, they can wake up the ancestral memory, or not the ancestral memory, but wake up the personal memory of that being, since the DNA and everything is exactly the same. Wake up that being, and they get their memories up until their point of death, but they're alive again, and they're a child, or they have to wait until a certain age for the brain and that being to be able to handle it. So there's that kind of technology in their world. So so that when if I touch on things like that you know what I'm talking about. All right, so Dune Messiah. Paul runs the universe, the known universe, from Dune, from the desert, not part of, not active in the hierarchy and the structure of the empire the way that a leader usually does. He's more of a spiritual leader, and he runs things from the Freeman in the deserts of Dune. So, at the end of Dune Messiah, Paul goes off into the desert forever. Goes off, leaves everybody, and goes off forever. And that's the end of Paul. Now, Paul has fathered two children. Leda the second, named after Paul's father, Leda, Duke Leda. But so from now on, when I say Leda, that's going to be Paul's son. He named him Leda the second. So Leda and the Ganima is the name of his sister. Leto and Ganima are both preborn. Are both born in the same way that Paul's sister, Aaliyah, in Dune is born. Born already having the spice break open their ancestral memory. When that happens, these children are beyond smart. Okay, they have memories and personality, and from conceivably hundreds of thousands of human beings, and the Bene Gesserits fear that kind of thing. They call it abomination. And Aaliyah, Paul's sister, is Leto and Ganima's aunt, and she is fighting with the abomination the whole time. The abomination is when somebody is born and not given sufficient time to build their own ego personality, build their own sense of self. And since there's all those memories and egos broken open inside the mind of that person, a very strong ego, a strong personality is going to take over and assert themselves as the primary personality. So Aaliyah has constantly fought with that ever since childhood, and fights with it throughout the entire book of Children of Dune. She is the one that is pretty much in charge after Paul's death. But also Paul's mother, Jessica, is a Bene Gesserit Reverend Mother who is also very influential. She, she's She's wise beyond anything that we have experience for as well. But this book focuses on Gana, I always mess up her name. Ganima, and Letta. And Ganima is preborn, and Letta is definitely preborn as well. Now Letta, uh, in this book, they take these children are being raised, very very much like by Bene Gesserits, by elites, and they take they take Letta, and they also break open his being to be a Kwisatz Haderach. Now that takes a huge amount of spice. It's basically an overdose on spice. And what does it do? Well, it made Paul a Kwisatz Haderach. And another thing that I didn't say before, what's Kwisatz Haderach is known as someone who can be in multiple places at the same time. Now, we don't see that play out with Paul. That's just something that's said about what a Kwisatz Haderach is. But we did see that Paul can see multiple future timelines. He can see the future timelines of any choice that he can make. He can see all of his own future timelines and therefore know what the outcomes of his choices will be. And he sees a path called the Golden Path. He calls it the Golden Path. And when Letta gets broken open, he sees the Golden Path as well. Now, Letta, when he gets his being fully matured and by the spice, he goes into the desert. He goes into the desert and he goes far into the desert, takes a sandworm and rides as far out and essentially is close to death, but he can see that he's not going to die. He can see a certain path. And what he does is he takes, it gets into a little bit of the life cycle of the sandworm in this one. The life cycle of the sandworm is a small little larva kind of thing, something maybe the size of your hand, that is kind of a jelly kind of thing. And this kind of larva state of the sandworm doesn't stay on the surface of the desert. It would dry up and die. So what it does is it stays down in the center of Dune, down way underneath the desert. And what is thought is that underneath Dune, down in the core of Dune, is all this water. And all the water that used to be on the surface when it was just not, a desert planet. And throughout this book, they're actually starting to terraform Dune. People are starting to terraform Dune and make it a more habitable planet, which will kill off all the sandworms. The sandworms cannot be touched by water. They will die if they are submerged in water. So the sand trout, they call the little larva stage, is thought to be down in the deep underground of Dune, encapsulating water sources, encapsulating water, and keeping it kind of just where it is, and for thousands of years growing down there and feeding off the water, kind of, who knows what it really kind of I'm not trying to give the whole thing away, but after thousands of years, the sandworm is an amazingly long-lived creature. Then it kind of goes into a change of its own, and kind of like a caterpillar to a butterfly. From this stage, maybe multiple sand trout together grow to form a sandworm, and then it breaks free from the depths and climbs up and is a sandworm that lives on the surface of the planet and lives out in the desert and loves the dry and all that. So Leto takes sand trout and puts them all over his body and can see, and he makes himself a suit, a still suit, which is what the Freemen use to keep all their body moisture on them, keep no loss of water. That's how they survive in the desert, the Freemen. Leto makes himself a still suit out of these sand trout, and they bind together all over his skin, and he essentially is encapsulated by a membrane of sand trout. And this is like an exoskeleton. After a while of that thing happening, and he can see this, he's already seeing, when he does something, he can see, and even before he does it, he can see what the ramifications of what he does will be. So he does this knowing that they will encapsulate his body and that they will make him more than human. Not essentially human anymore, but a kind of symbiotic relationship between the sand trout and him. And he becomes a kind of sand trout man. Very strong, and his intellect and his wisdom and his far-seeingness is off the charts. And he goes and essentially takes over everything. Nothing can oppose him. He can see any decision he needs to make. In this book, we come into contact. There is a guy that is in the out in the sand, out in the dunes. That is a sandworm rider, one of the freemen of an OG freeman or something, and he's called the preacher, and he's a blind preacher, and it's widely believed that it's Paul, and Leto goes and confronts his father, and so there we go for Children of Dune. I don't want to kind of give too much more away, because what happens next, as far as what I'm trying to get across, during this, there's a lot of other power struggles, a lot of things happening. I'm leaving an immense amount of plot out. I'm not doing this for spoilers, but doing it for inspiration to read it, because what happens is Leto becomes the God Emperor of Dune. Leto lives. Now Dune happens, and then Dune Messiah, maybe 7 years after, if I remember correctly, and then after the events of Dune Messiah, maybe 10 years after that is Children of Dune. But after Children of Dune, we have like a 3,000 year span of time. And in that span of time, that is how long it's been that Leto is running the universe, totally running the universe with an iron fist. The human race has been put into a peace imposed by the tyrant. They call him the tyrant, Leto II. There's Frank Herbert there. And they're helpless against it, By the beginning of God Emperor of Dune, Dune has been completely or almost completely terraformed. It is no longer a desert planet. It is a regular a planet with tropical zones and temperate zones and things like that. There is a haven of desert where Leto lives because he's a sandworm, essentially. He's a sandworm man. And he is beyond powerful and beyond wise and beyond hated. Okay? Everybody hates Leto. Now, there's another group called the Guild. And the Guild is all the beings that are involved in interplanetary and intergalactic travel. Now, to make a jump, towards light speed or higher, that it's going to take to go from one galaxy to another, or one universe, one galaxy to another, or even within a galaxy from one side of the galaxy to another. And to see all the obstacles and all this kind of thing it requires a being that has prescient ability, pretty much prescient ability more than what spice gives a normal person. And so humans that are part of that group, the Guild, who that navigators, they navigate the ships to travel. They live in a spice bath, and it changes their bodies. They become different, not human looking. And so there's that group. Now, that group is essentially dependent upon Leto in God Emperor, because there's no travel, there's no guild without spice. And since Dune is now a lush, temperate and plants and rain and all that planet, there's no more sandworms on Dune. Now, that's not to say that there's no more sandworms, because the Bene Gesserits, being the far-seeing, order that they are, at least them, they have a sandworm. They have a few sandworms. And they have them, and they're actually terraforming. I believe that's when this starts, that they're terraforming their planet in the opposite direction. They're creating a Dune or something like that. So, here you get the most philosophical, the most profound, the most amazing installment, I think, of the entire Dune series. This is where it really kicks in. This is where you get the idea of Leto's golden path. Now, Leto sees a golden path, and whereas Paul sold a golden path and he rejected it, Leto sees a golden path and embraces it. Now, what is that? From what I can gather and give before, without spoiling, the golden path is a path away from stagnation. He's working against the human race coming to a point where it stagnates. So, what does he do? He becomes the biggest tyrant, the worst, most. Everybody is working against Leto, and they are working against him completely from the start of this book. And probably the 3,000 years that we don't see of his reign. They're working against him, trying to take him down, because he's locked down the entire human race. He makes every decision. He's in all control. Now he's taken over the Bene Gesserit breeding program as well, and he's bred a very special person, and he's done it over the course of this 3,000 years. He's bred somebody, the only person in the universe. He's bred somebody that he cannot see in his prescient mind. He cannot see where they are. He cannot see what they're doing. It's the only person that he had, the only person in the universe that he can't see. The only person that can do something that he can't foresee. And he's bred that. And so he's put this kind of thing out in the human genetics. Now the language of genetics is never used in this book, but I'm using it because I'm talking about it in a way that we can understand easily. This is amazing stuff. Leto is looked at as a horrifying, just a megalomaniac, horrifying being. But actually what he's doing is making the most ultimate sacrifice for human beings that you can make, which is to give yourself. And he's given himself over the course of a lifetime that is longer than most people can understand, and given himself for the greater of all. How? By showing us how bad it could be so that humans actually grow. Continue to grow rather than stagnate. So that's all I want to give on God Emperor, because there's a whole lot in there that is beautiful and awesome, and I'm not trying to spoil, but I think that I've done sufficient to just kind of make people think, hey, yeah, I got to read that. I got to know what's up. So now we've gotten through the first 4 books. There's only 2 more books of Frank Herbert's original series to go through, and thank you for joining me, book team. And leave any comments, anything you like or don't like. I'll touch on things in later videos. Any comments are appreciated. Happy reading. Bye.